Today, we will explore one of the most important skills in medical affairs, strategic thinking. In fact, strategic thinking is the first domain of the core competencies framework of medical affairs. And moreover, it is the skill that separates good medical affairs teams from truly great medical affairs ones. And also, it is the answer when your leaders ask you about measuring the impact of medical affairs. Strategic thinking and planning are the answers. In some organizations, medical affairs is seen as a function that reacts. We respond to requests, we provide slide reviews, medical information, we prepare for scientific update or organize advisory boards. They are all very important initiatives, but they are actually just tactical initiatives. They are not strategic initiatives. What elevates us as medical affairs is the strategic thinking. It helps us and helps every one of us actually to showcase the impact of our work. So it helps us to see the bigger picture, to anticipate what healthcare systems want, what regulators and physicians and patients expect from us, and what they expect tomorrow. And so we can start building that future today. When we talk about strategic thinking in medical affairs, or we can call it medical affairs strategy, and let's say that you are a therapeutic area lead. You need to answer questions like, for example, where is the therapy area heading in the next 3 to 5 years? That's for the therapeutic area lead. If you are a medical lead in a country, you may need to answer questions like, what evidence will payers and regulators demand that doesn't exist today? In other words, your strategy here should address the gap in evidence generation in your country. And if you are a medical director, for example, you need to answer questions like, how can we position medical affairs as a trusted partner, not just a supportive function internally, or a scientific partner externally? These are just a few examples to make the picture closer, but they all indicate, at least for now, that any strategic leader should have a vision for the next 3 to 5 years, rather than being focused on just the tactical activities alone. Let me share also with you some examples from the main industry. And let's take an example of those pharmaceutical organizations that began investing in biologics very early, before anyone else. So what happened? Because of their vision, they were ready with breakthroughs when the time came. Or let's think of companies that invested in the science of mRNA vaccines, for example, an innovation that may have helped to save millions of lives during the pandemic. These success stories were the results of strategic foresight. And in medical affairs, we need that foresight, whether it is anticipating the importance of real-world data, planning for digital transformation or omni-channel change, or aligning the national healthcare priorities. So today in this tutorial, we will break down what strategic thinking really means in the context of medical affairs, why it matters, why it is important, not for the organizations, but for us as medical affairs, for our patients, and for the healthcare systems. And we will also share a simple but actually very practical 5 steps framework that you can apply, use it to apply strategic thinking in your daily work. And we will also share how we can use this framework if we are country level, regional level, or at even global level. So by the end of this session, you will be equipped not only to define strategic thinking, but also to apply it, so that your role in medical affairs becomes one of leadership, influence, and long-term impact. Let's continue with demonstrating the value of strategic thinking. And I wanted to do this a different way. I want to do this not by sharing success stories, but let me share with you what would happen if strategic thinking is missing. Do you remember a company called Kodak? Kodak actually invented the first digital camera back in the 1970s. I didn't know that. But instead of embracing this opportunity, the company ignored the potential. They were scared that the new invention would disrupt their film business. Then competitors like Canon, Sony, and later even Apple and smartphones took the lead, while Kodak kept holding to its old model. By the time they realized that the world had moved, has changed, it was too late, and the company vanished in 2012. What can we learn from this? If we only focus on today's activities and success or short term initiatives and ignore the healthcare strategies where healthcare and technology are moving, for example, we risk becoming irrelevant. Strategic thinking means anticipating the next picture, the next big shift, whether that's digital engagement, real world evidence, or artificial intelligence in healthcare and preparing for it early enough. Let's take another example or another case where the absence of strategic thinking cost the company its very existence. In the early 2000s, there was a company called Blockbuster. It was dominant player in the home entertainment and video rental industry, Blockbuster, with thousands of stores scattered worldwide. Around that time, a small company called Netflix approached Blockbuster with a proposal and a new idea. Their proposal was to partner on a new idea, which was the digital streaming. But Blockbuster dismissed the idea, dismissed the proposal, believing that the rental model will secure, will be secured enough time and that the customers would keep coming to their stores. We all know what happened next. Netflix leaned into the digital future, transforming the world consumes how the world consumes entertainment, while Blockbuster held to the past. Within a decade, Netflix became the global powerhouse and the Blockbuster was gone. What can we learn from this story again? If we rely only on traditional ways of engaging, let's say, our physicians, or the traditional ways in generating evidence, we may miss the transformations that will really shape the future of healthcare. Strategic thinking means asking ourselves, what will our healthcare professionals, patients, and payers need 5 years from now? Not just what they need today. And it means being ready to adapt before the shift becomes unavoidable. Let's take another example from the industry. I can recall a famous COX-2 inhibitor, a medication that was celebrated as a breakthrough, quickly reaching the top level. But soon after it was launched, signals of serious safety adverse events began to emerge. Instead of preparing for how the regulators, physicians, and patients might react to these findings, the company was slow to respond and underestimated the consequences. They could have easily adopted real-world evidence strategy to generate data across different countries, but they didn't do so. The result was a global withdrawal that not only caused financial damage or financial losses, but severely damaged the credibility of this organization. We can learn from this story, and it happened, by the way, almost to every company, that without strategic thinking around evidence generation, risk management, and transparent communication, even the most successful products can collapse overnight. And let's take another example from, again, the industry. In early 2010, Novartis acquired Alcon, the world's largest eye care company by that time. Any deal that I think it was exceeded 50 billion US dollars. On paper, this merger between Novartis and Alcon seemed perfect, looked like a bold expansion move. But over time, it became clear that Alcon's device and surgical portfolio didn't fully align with Novartis' core strengths in the pharmaceuticals and biotechnology. This integration challenges came to the surface mounted, and the acquisition failed to deliver the expected synergies. Eventually, they separated again in after 9 years in 2019. A learning from this story or case that strategic vision is not about the size or scale alone. It's about ensuring every initiative, whether it's a partnership, a merger, a study, a therapeutic investment, should be aligned with the long term priorities and capabilities. Without that link or without that alignment, even biggest deals can become distractions rather than drivers of growth. And there is another big learning also, I think, here that big companies and huge organizations need to have clear, sound strategies as well, 3 to 5 years or even more. And that these big organizations are like individuals. They can make mistakes, and organizations that did wrong strategic moves are many. Now we can move to define strategic thinking and its practical framework. Strategic thinking is the disciplined process of analyzing the current environment, anticipating future trends, and identifying opportunities and risks in order to define a long term vision and set of priorities. It involves connecting information with multiple resources, challenging assumptions, considering both short term needs and long term objectives to guide decision making. In medical affairs, strategic thinking means moving beyond operational tasks to proactively shape scientific, clinical, stakeholder activities in ways that align with the company overall goals, with healthcare priorities and patient needs. It requires foresight, adaptability, and the ability to translate insights into actions that create sustainable value. Strategic thinking is fundamentally a cognitive process. It is not a checklist of tasks, but a way of using our mind to connect the present with the future. It requires the ability of sensitizing large amount of information, spotting patterns, and seeing relationships that may not be obvious at the first glance. Cognitively, it involves both analytical reasoning, where we can break down data and evaluate options, and creative thinking, where we can imagine future scenarios and alternative pathways. It also depends on systems thinking, which is the mental capacity to view healthcare, science, and business as interconnected pieces of a large picture. We will discuss all these cognitive strategies in future episodes. For medical affairs, this means training the mind to move fluidly between evidence, stakeholder insights, and external trends, while continuously asking, what does this mean for the future? And how should we respond today? Now that we have seen what is strategic thinking and why it is important, the next question is how do we actually do it? Strategic thinking can sound abstract, but it becomes very practical when we use a structured approach. Now, let me share with you a simple 5 step framework that you can apply in your day to day work in medical affairs. This framework starts with the first step, that is situational awareness, or in other words, scanning the environment around us. Strategic thinking must start with clarity. So you need to understand where you are before you can decide where you want to go. Situational analysis means scanning both inside and outside your organization. Internally, ask yourself, what resources do we have? What expertise, data, and capabilities are available? Externally, look at the health ecosystem. What are the unmet medical needs? What are the competitors doing? What are regulators demanding and expecting? And how are patients and physicians evolving? Think of it like taking a wide angle snapshot of the world around you, the world that you operate in. Without this step, strategy becomes a guesswork. One of the most practical tools, of course, to use during the situation analysis step is the SWOT analysis, the SWOT model, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. For medical affairs, SWOT is extremely valuable, in fact, because it forces us to look inward at our capabilities and outward at the healthcare ecosystem. It helps us and our teams to identify where they can lead, where they need to improve, and what external trends could either accelerate or block their success. And while new frameworks came after the SWOT, I think the SWOT will never get old. It's simple, clear, and it has a high relevance actually, and this will ensure that it remains a timeless method for grounding medical affairs strategy in reality. In the next episodes, we will dedicate some time for the SWOT situation and analysis model and how to apply it. The second step in the framework is to define the North Star. And the North Star is another word to the vision and objectives. Once you understand the landscape after the situation analysis, you must define your direction. And here, strategic thinking is about more than short term wins. It's about identifying a North Star that will guide your decisions for years ahead. This is very important. So here you need to ask yourself, where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? And then translate that into clear, measurable objectives. In medical affairs, this could becoming the most trusted scientific partner in your therapeutic area, or generating real-world evidence to secure reimbursement, or driving earlier diagnosis through medical educations. So the North Star gives purpose to your daily activities, and we will share some examples later. Now we come to the third step in this framework, which is to list our options, our choices, our strategic choices. And there are always many things that you could do, but strategy is not about this. Strategy is about choosing the few that matter most. So first you have to generate options, then start to prioritize based on two main dimensions. One, impact, two, feasibility. For example, should you invest in a large registry study or run multiple smaller initiatives? Or not any one of them, but partner with medical activity societies? The right choice is the one that moves you closer to your vision, to your North Star, while making the best use of your available resources. Remember, strategy is about focus, not about doing everything. Now, after this step, it's time for the execution or for creating an execution roadmap, which will translate these strategies or the priorities into action. Because a strategy, of course, that lives on the paper has no value. Strategic thinking must be translated into execution, into a tactical plan, which is the strategic planning part of this skills. Here you build a roadmap with clear timelines, responsibilities, success measures. Medical affairs, this could mean planning when advisory boards will happen, what data will be published and when payer engagement will start, or when digital platforms will be launched. Importantly, you have to link each of these activities back to the vision, back to the bigger vision, and every task connects to the larger story. Finally, step 5 is about continuous reflection. Because strategic thinking is not a one-time exercise. The world of healthcare changes too fast. for any static plan. So you need to continuously monitor the progress, review KPIs, adapt when new evidence, regulations, or guidelines or competitor actions emerge. Strategic thinkers are flexible. They know when to stay the course and when to adjust the directions. In medical affairs, this might mean updating your evidence plan if a competitor publishes new data, or, for example, shifting priorities if a new national guideline is released. The key takeaway from this framework is that it is about discipline. Because when you think of it, like by scanning the environment, defining the North Star, making smart choices, building an execution roadmap, and continuously reflecting, you move from being reactive to being truly strategic. And when medical affairs operates with this mindset, and imagine that we apply this, for example, at the country level, regional level, global levels, this will be the real success and the real answers to the impact of medical affairs. Now, let's bring this framework to life with practical examples. And let's start with launching a new medication in oncology. And imagine you are part of the medical affairs team in a country that has just received an approval for this new oncology therapy. It's a breakthrough medication supported by strong global trial data, and there is excitement within your company about it. But the challenge is that competitors are already established in this tumor type. Reimbursement is not yet secured, and physicians are cautious about switching treatments, as usual. How do you, as medical affairs, think strategically using this five steps framework to ensure that this therapy makes a real difference for patients? Let's walk through the five steps together one by one. In the situational analysis, probably we will list all the factors that we mentioned above. You will scan the environment. First, we take a clear snapshot of what's happening. Internally, we know we have excellent phase 3 trial results, but we don't have local data. Our MSL team or field medical team is small. We don't have enough MSLs with limited capacity to cover all regions, and our budget is tight, as usual. Externally, the payer is skeptical. They are asking for evidence of cost effectiveness, real world outcomes, while competitors have already secured this in their place in the national guidelines and with key opinion leaders. Key opinion leaders are raising questions about which patients will benefit most from this new therapy. Take care. Without all this situational scan or analysis, we might rush into activities that sounds good, but don't necessarily address the real barriers to adoption of this new medication. After this situation analysis, we will define the North Star, our vision and objectives. And here we, as we addressed before, we will set the direction. Our North Star in this situation is clear: to position this therapy as the standard of care for this biomarker positive patients within 3 years or 5 years. But 3 years is more logical for oncology. And here we define the concrete objectives. For example, generate local real-world evidence to complement trial data. Another example, engage oncologists across the country to build scientific confidence. 3, ensure payers have robust data to support reimbursement. Raise awareness for the biomarker testing as a prerequisite for identifying eligible patients. Every activity we plan must be linked to the bigger picture, must link you back to the 4 objectives. The third step is the strategic choices. And here you need to identify and prioritize the options. Here is where we make decisions. We could choose to run multiple small local studies, for example, but that would need a lot of resources. Alternatively, we can invest in a single national registry that captures real-world data and biomarker testing patterns, for example. When it comes to key opinion leader engagements, we could host one large advisory board in the capital city, or we could organize smaller regional roundtables to reach a broader group of clinicians. We need to select which will bring us closer to the North Star. For medical education, we might spend heavily on conferences, symposia, or we could prioritize a digital platform that reaches physicians to understand their needs and have a discussion with them. So, what's the strategic choice? After listing all these activities, we need to set priorities. We will give green light to each of them and we will decline others. So here we decided, as an example, to go with a larger registry coupled with regional key opinion leader roundtables and digital educational platform. These options give us the biggest impact for the resources that we have. When it comes to execution, we will translate our strategic options into action. And here the vision needs to become a plan. Let's say, for example, that in year one, we will launch the registry at 15 oncology centers and run 3 regional scientific roundtables to introduce the therapy and gather feedback. At the same time, we partner with pathology societies to promote the biomarker testing. In year two, we publish the first interim results from the registry and expand our digital education platform to engage over or the top oncologists in the nationwide. We also conduct payer roundtables to share early real-world outcomes, cost effectiveness, and health outcome research results. By year three, we aim to integrate our evidence into regional or national guidelines and secure reimbursement while presenting registry results at international conference. Every step connects directly back to our North Star. The final step is the continuous reflection, monitoring, and adapting. First, we don't lock the plan in stone. Every quarter, we have to review the registry enrollment. Are we meeting the targets of the registry? If not, we need to adapt by offering more site support, for example. If payers come back with certain requests for economic modeling, we need to adjust and bring in health economics partners as well. If competitors launch new evidence, we refine our messages to highlight our differentiating value. So, as you see, strategic thinking is very dynamic. It's about learning, adjusting, and staying ahead. The outcome in this example, if you plan it over 3 years and you go step by step, the medical affairs, in this hypothetical example, becomes the driver of the therapy success in that country. Physicians gain confidence through the real-world evidence, payers see the value of reimbursement, and patients will gain access to life-changing medications. Before having a different example, let me share with you another important point in this example. When we claim as medical affairs that we have impacted the success of an oncology product in this example or a new launch in general, we need to understand that we cannot come back with this claim after 1 year. Medical affairs impact needs longer time. So if you, for example, say that you will do registry, you will not have the results to publish except after a couple of years. If you say that you will have 10 or 100 roundtable discussions with key opinion leaders, you cannot say that after 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 roundtable discussions that you have achieved, or you can claim that you have changed the educational level of the clinicians or the oncologists. So strategic planning is a long-term planning. It requires vision, and you have to wait to claim or to claim the position or the success.